Let's get straight to the point. Maybe you're carrying more weight than you realize, accumulating things that drain your energy and impede your progress, relationships that hold you back, habits that weaken you, and beliefs that aren't really yours. But have you ever stopped to think about why you still keep all of this? Often the greatest act of courage is leaving behind what is no longer good for us. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus our efforts on what is within our power and to accept what we cannot change. This is a silent act of liberation, which does not require justification or approval from anyone. When we free ourselves from these burdens, we give ourselves space to live more lightly and truthfully. What we decide to let go of says a lot about who we are, perhaps even more than what we choose to keep. Life is too short to be tied to other people's expectations or choices that limit us. Today, I want to show you how to let go of those weights and find your inner peace. Before we dive deeper into this topic, I want to share an inspiring story. John was an experienced climber, used to facing imposing mountains and dangerous trails. But this time he decided to go further and climb Kora Mountain, the highest and most challenging of them all. The name of this mountain meant liberation, and he knew it would be a great challenge. He prepared a backpack with essential items for survival, as well as some objects of great sentimental value, such as a stone from an ancient mountain, a notebook with his notes, and an amulet given by his mother. In the first few days of the climb, John noticed that his backpack felt heavier than ever. The path was difficult, the air became thinner and the biting cold penetrated his clothes. To make matters worse, an unexpected storm arose, and he had to take shelter in a small cave. Sitting there, exhausted, he felt the weight of everything he was carrying and reflected. If he wanted to continue, he would need to be lighter and more agile. But how can he leave behind objects so important to him? With a heavy heart, John opened his backpack and looked at each item carefully. First, he took out his notebook, full of memories, but now just taking up space. Then he picked up the stone, a symbol of an ancient victory, but one that would not help him on the way up. Finally, he held his mother's amulet, and with a deep sigh realized that his connection with her did not depend on an object. With less weight on his back, John felt a new energy take over him. As soon as the storm passed, he resumed climbing, now lighter and more determined. When he finally reached the top of the mountain, he understood the true meaning of the word liberation, giving up what is not essential to reach higher places. The lesson of this story. Often we can only achieve our biggest goals when we have the courage to let go of what holds us back. The weight we carry only reveals itself when we finally let it go. So, let's take the first step and remove what no longer makes sense in your life. Number 1. The dirt of negative thoughts. Negative thoughts are like leftover food left in the sink. At first they seem harmless, just small scraps left behind. But over time they accumulate, create a bad smell, and attract the worst things. Likewise, when we let negative thoughts go without dealing with them, they begin to spread in our mind. Little by little, they create patterns of fear, insecurity, and doubts about ourselves and the world around us. For the Stoics, it's not enough to just dismiss these thoughts. You need to look at their origin. Epictetus warned us that negative thoughts arise from wrong judgments and beliefs that limit us. The first step to combating them is to identify them as soon as they appear, without allowing them to grow like forgotten dirt. Our mind, like our body, needs daily care to stay healthy. Whenever a negative thought arises, ask yourself, does this help me have peace? Can I do something about it now? If the answer is no, imagine that thought going away, as if you were cleaning out something you no longer need, making space for clearer, more positive ideas. A good strategy is to write a list of good things that are happening in your life. If you find yourself falling back into a cycle of negativity, look at this list and focus on something that makes you feel grateful, whether it's a special person, a happy moment, or a small achievement from the day. Every thought you feed is like a seed planted in your mind. Choose to plant only what you want to harvest. When we eliminate negative residue, we create space for true peace, a peace that comes from the choices we make every day. What you think influences who you become. May this idea guide your decisions, helping to keep your mind clear, like someone taking care of their own home. bringing more lightness and clarity to each day. Number 2, the desire to control everything. We only have 24 hours in a day, but still, we insist on carrying the weight of everything around us. We stretch out our arms, trying to hold the world back, believing that if we can keep everything under control, we will avoid problems and prevent something from going the way we planned. But does this really work? French philosopher Blaise Pascal said, "Man's unhappiness lies in his inability to remain silent in a room. Our intense desire for control prevents us from seeing a simple truth. Life will never be completely in our hands. The need to master every detail only generates more anxiety and frustration. Reality follows its own course, regardless of our will, and there will always be moments that we cannot predict or prevent. The more we try to force things to go our way, the more we wear ourselves out. Instead of finding security, we lose our peace of mind. Our true power is not in controlling events, but in how we choose to respond to them. We can learn to adapt, to deal with the unexpected, and to cultivate calm, even when everything seems uncertain. This is the only control we truly have, and understanding this gives us freedom. Giving up the desire to control everything does not mean giving up. On the contrary, it means choosing to live more lightly. If we don't make this choice, we run the risk of locking ourselves into an endless struggle, frustrating ourselves with every obstacle, and exhausting ourselves with everything that goes beyond our planning. Remember, often the first step to finding peace is letting go of what was never within our control. Number 3, self-sabotage. Have you ever noticed how some people always experience the same situations? That friend who repeatedly falls in love with the same type of person, with the same manner, the same way of speaking, the same habits. At first everything seems different, but somehow the story ends the same way. Or that person who, no matter where they work, always finds a boss who is rigid and difficult to deal with. This is not just a coincidence. These are patterns that repeat themselves because, without realizing it, we create them ourselves. Often, these situations come from our insecurities, the fears we carry, and the stories we tell ourselves. They become invisible cycles that trap us without us even realizing it. Ancient Stoic philosophers taught that to break these cycles, the first step is to see them clearly. Epictetus said, "It is not the facts that affect us, but the way we interpret them." This means that the problem is not just in the error, but in the way we face it and let it define who we are. Imagine someone who went through a difficult relationship or a business that didn't work out. If this person believes that nothing ever goes right for me, or that I'm not good enough, every new experience will be influenced by this belief. Thus the cycle strengthens, and a mistake that could teach something becomes a weight that prevents any change. As long as we do not see the patterns that repeat themselves, they will continue to determine our choices. And recognizing this is not enough. It is necessary to act differently for history to change. Have you ever heard the expression tripping over the same stone over and over again? The problem is not the stone, but the path we choose. If we continue walking in the same direction, we will always encounter the same obstacles. To get out of this cycle, we need to look for new routes, new ways of acting. We often repeat the same mistakes because we are afraid of the unknown. Even if a situation causes us suffering, it is familiar to us, and this gives us a false sense of security. But if we continue to hold on to the same stories, we will never be free to grow and change. Those who do not allow themselves to evolve become prisoners of their own choices. Breaking out of this cycle requires courage to try something new, even if it seems uncertain or uncomfortable. As Brené Brown says, choosing the right over the familiar is one of the greatest acts of courage. Breaking patterns means letting go of what ties us to the past and discovering that, no matter how uncertain the new path seems, it can take us to a much better place than anything we've ever known. If you want to learn more about emotional intelligence and stoicism, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to follow the next videos. Number 4. Limitless digital distraction. We live in a time where digital surrounds us like an ocean without borders. Social networks, incessant notifications, short and addictive videos, films and series in endless marathons. We are immersed in a constant flow of information and stimuli. as if we were swimming aimlessly in this vast sea of content. The problem is not the technology itself, but the way we relate to it. Instead of using technology as a tool to enrich our lives, we often allow it to dominate us, distract us, and take us away from what really matters. The crucial question is, are we in control of the digital, or is the digital in control of us? When we automatically open our cell phones at the slightest sign of boredom, when we feel an almost compulsive need to check notifications, or when we spend hours scrolling through feeds without even realizing it, it is a clear sign that we are being guided by technology and not the other way around. Our attention, which should be a valuable and well-directed resource, is being fragmented, diluted, and manipulated. And this has consequences: less focus, more anxiety, less presence in the moment, and more mental fatigue. But the problem is not in the technology itself, but in the excess, the lack of moderation. The ancient Stoics already taught that the secret to a balanced life is knowing how to differentiate the essential from the superfluous. They sought simplicity and discipline to focus on what really mattered. Today, the distractions are digital, but the teaching remains valid. Without control, we become hostages to impulses, and our mind, once clear and strong, fragments in 1,000 different directions. As Schopenhauer observed, health is not everything, but without it, everything else is nothing. We can say the same about our mental clarity. Without it, every other area of our life suffers. Every time we decide to ignore an unnecessary notification or close an app to focus on the present moment, we are taking back a piece of our attention. Small gestures, such as muting social media during important moments, setting times for cell phone use, and dedicating time to reading or silence, are powerful ways to strengthen our mind. Intentionally creating moments of stillness and presence turns technology into an ally, not an enemy. Practicing digital moderation is an act of self-care and protecting our mental energy. It's like building an invisible wall around our inner peace. By making conscious choices about how we spend our attention, we are actually reaffirming our own worth. Our mind was not made to consume information endlessly, but to reflect, create, and be present. Regaining focus isn't just about productivity, it's an act of self-love. When we choose what is essential and recover our mental clarity, we are deep down recovering ourselves. And if you're enjoying the content, consider becoming a member of the channel. In addition to helping the channel, you also have exclusive content. Click on the link in the description and become a member right now. Returning to the content. Number 5, need to always be right. Sometimes our desire to prove ourselves right prevents us from seeing beyond, taking us away from what really matters: learning and understanding others. At a university in the United States, a professor carried out an interesting experiment. He divided the class into 2 groups and gave each one the same image, but with different instructions. To one group he said, "This is the portrait of my wife." To the other he stated, "This is the portrait of my mother-in-law." What the students didn't know was that they were looking at an illustration that could be seen in 2 different ways. Some saw a young woman in profile, while others saw an older woman looking down. The debate quickly spread throughout the room. Each group was absolutely certain that their interpretation was the only one possible. But then, the professor revealed the truth. The image was the same for everyone. What changed was the way each person perceived it, influenced by their personal beliefs and experiences. This experience teaches us something valuable. Our worldview is not the only one that exists. What we believe to be true may just be a reflection of how we see things, and not an absolute truth. When we free ourselves from the need to always be right, we can see beyond our own limitations and become more open to learning from others. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "No one can learn something they think they already know." Recognizing that someone else's point of view can be just as valid as ours helps us develop a growth mindset, where learning and exchanging ideas are more important than winning an argument. Remember, growing up does not mean proving that we are right, but rather being willing to see the world in new ways. And when we give up the need to be right all the time, we gain something much greater: the freedom to constantly learn and evolve. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video. Number 5. need to always be right. Sometimes our desire to prove ourselves right prevents us from seeing beyond, taking us away from what really matters, learning and understanding others. At a university in the United States, a professor carried out an interesting experiment. He divided the class into two groups and gave each one the same image but with different instructions. To one group, he said, "This is the portrait of my wife." To the other, he stated, "This is the portrait of my mother-in-law." What the students didn't know was that they were looking at an illustration that could be seen in two different ways. Some saw a young woman in profile, while others saw an older woman looking down. The debate quickly spread throughout the room. Each group was absolutely certain that their interpretation was the only one possible. But then, the professor revealed the truth. The image was the same for everyone. What changed was the way each person perceived it, influenced by their personal beliefs and experiences. This experience teaches us something valuable. Our worldview is not the only one that exists. What we believe to be true may just be a reflection of how we see things, and not an absolute truth. When we free ourselves from the need to always be right, we can see beyond our own limitations and become more open to learning from others. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "No one can learn something they think they already know." Recognizing that someone else's point of view can be just as valid as ours helps us develop a growth mindset, where learning and exchanging ideas are more important than winning an argument. Remember, growing up does not mean proving that we are right, but rather being willing to see the world in new ways. And when we give up the need to be right all the time, we gain something much greater, the freedom to constantly learn and evolve. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video. Number 6. Lies. Have you ever noticed how some people say one thing but do something completely different? This contradiction does not go unnoticed, neither by others nor by themselves. The lack of truth weighs heavily, even if we can't see it. Every lie we tell becomes an invisible weight, a shadow that takes us away from who we really are. Eliminating these lies is like pushing away the shadows around us, allowing the light of our true essence to shine. Epictetus said, "First tell yourself what you want to be and then act accordingly." By choosing the truth, we get closer to reality and ourselves. Each lie forces us to support a story that doesn't belong to us, as if we were playing a role for which we never rehearsed. Sooner or later, the truth comes out, and the effort to maintain this illusion wears us down. Stoic philosophy teaches us to seek self-knowledge and align our actions with what we believe. Whoever chooses the truth finds tranquility. Living honestly is not just a quality, it is an act of freedom. Being true means walking without the weight of masks that are not ours. When we decide to be authentic, we achieve not only peace but also relationships based on trust. It's like stopping wearing shoes that pinch and hurt. Finally, we were able to walk without pain, with firm and safe steps. As neuroscientist Sam Harris said, "True freedom is living without needing to hide." Leaving lies behind is not just a matter of morality, but a path for peace and authenticity to grow, bringing clarity and strengthening trust in our lives. And before we continue, I need to tell you something important. This video came to you because someone liked it, subscribed to the channel and commented. This is how YouTube understands that our content makes a difference and shows it to more people who need to hear it. So, do the same and help this message reach those in need. Number 7. Unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations are like images on the horizon that seem real but disappear as soon as we get closer. When we imagine perfect situations, we forget that life is full of surprises and that not everything is under our control. Epictetus, one of the great thinkers of Stoicism, teaches us that adjusting our expectations does not mean giving up, but rather freeing ourselves from frustrations and finding more tranquility in everyday life. How many times do we expect people to act exactly as we would like? That a friend never makes mistakes, that a loved one always understands us, that everyone sees the world the same way we do. But these expectations are almost never met, and when we depend on the behavior of others to feel good, we forget that each person has their own way of seeing and living life. In the same way, Who has never drawn up a detailed plan to achieve a dream, believing that everything would happen in a linear way? But the path of life is not a straight line. It has curves, unexpected challenges, and changes that cannot be avoided. Trying to follow a rigid script can be suffocating, while accepting the unexpected makes us wiser and more balanced. Think of a garden that you cultivate with dedication. You prepare the land, water the plants, make sure nothing harms them. But the sun and rain don't depend on you. You do what you can, but you need to accept what is beyond your reach. When we understand this, we find peace in what we can really change. Having very rigid expectations does not guarantee good results. In fact, it can only bring us frustration. When we learn to adjust our expectations, we develop a more flexible mind and free ourselves from the idea that everything needs to happen exactly as we imagine. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't spend your energy lamenting that the world is not as you would like it to be. Use that energy to improve what you can within yourself." Our strength is not in forcing reality to fit our desires, but in being flexible enough to grow along with it. Let go of unrealistic expectations and discover the lightness of those who accept and learn from each experience. After all, true peace comes not from absolute control, but from trusting that we can handle any situation. But there is a catch. If you've been trying for a long time to get out of conformity and ignorance, and you can't do it in any way, maybe it's for other reasons that you don't know what's causing this. But I know what it is. It's anxiety. Anxiety comes like a silent snake and poisons you without you feeling it. This leaves you infected for days, months, and even years. And if you have that, it would be like living sick. However, there is an antidote from the Stoics, which together with modern psychology can free you from all this, just as it freed me. I made a video showing how you can get rid of this poison in your life. It's in the first comment. Click on the link in the first comment and cure yourself of this poison of anxiety. Number 8. Gossip. Imagine you are at a party talking to friends when someone approaches you and says, "Did you hear what happened to that person? Did you hear about that couple fighting over there?" Without even realizing it, you feel like knowing more. It's almost instinctive. But does this information really make a difference in your life? Gossip spreads like wildfire. At first, it seems small and unimportant, but it soon gains strength and can cause irreparable damage. Those who are wise understand that this type of conversation, however harmless it may seem, can be like poison disguised as entertainment. But why do we feel so curious about other people's lives? Research shows that a large part of our daily conversations revolve around other people. In the past, this habit helped our ancestors share useful information for survival. Today, however, it often only causes misunderstandings and unnecessary hurt. Before you tell something about someone, ask yourself a simple question. Would I feel good if they were saying this about me? The desire to know about other people's lives is like an uncomfortable noise that insists on attracting our attention. The best way to deal with this is to direct that energy into something more positive. Instead of spreading stories about others, how about sharing something inspiring, a recent learning, or an idea that could make a difference? Socrates said, "The best way to build a good reputation is to be what you want to appear." Having self-control and avoiding gossip is a sign of strength, not weakness. Try a little challenge. For a week, do your best not to talk about anyone's business. This simple exercise can change the way you communicate and bring more quality to your conversations. Another powerful attitude is to change the subject when you notice that the conversation is taking that direction. Instead of reinforcing a negative comment, bring something positive, something that adds value. And above all, practice silence before talking over someone. A brief pause can avoid regrets and make your speech more mindful. If one day you realize that you have fallen into the gossip trap, don't blame yourself. The most important thing is to reflect on the impact of your words and make better choices. In the future, having discipline when speaking is not just a sign of maturity, but a step towards a truer and lighter life. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, everything we hear is just an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is just a perspective, not the truth. Gossip takes us away from the clarity and wisdom that emerge in silence. Choosing what is worth saying is a way of taking care of yourself and others. Number 9. Speaking emotionally. Words spoken in the heat of emotion can leave marks that may never completely disappear. Before speaking, stopping to reflect is not just a sign of self-control, but a demonstration of wisdom. Speaking without thinking is like throwing a stone that can never be picked up. The explosion of the moment may last a few seconds, but its consequences remain, both for those who hear and those who speak. Often, regret comes too late. Stoic philosophers teach us that when we let emotions take over what we say, we are giving our power away to the outside world. Marco Aurelio said that, to preserve inner peace, we need to train our mind to find silence before responding. This does not mean hiding our feelings, but learning to use them with balance. We are often used to reacting immediately, without realizing that there is a small gap between what we hear and what we say. It is in this space that our true power lies, the choice of how to respond. Taking a break in moments of tension is an act of respect for ourselves. Silence gives us a chance to understand our feelings and evaluate the impact of our words before we say them. This brief moment of calm offers us clarity and direction. Think about a situation where someone irritates or disappoints you. The impulsive reaction may be to say something rude, but what do we really gain from that? Likewise, when we are very excited, we can make promises or commitments that then become a burden. Choosing silence is not weakness, but a shield that protects our integrity. The Stoic pause functions as a bridge between emotion and reason, allowing our words to reflect who we truly are, without being guided by passing impulses. By abandoning the habit of reacting without thinking, we discover that self-control goes beyond emotional intelligence. It is an act of deep respect for ourselves and others, as it gives us the opportunity to act calmly and consciously, without being dominated by the emotions of the moment. Number 10. Fear of other people's opinions. It's interesting to see how other people's opinions can influence our choices so much, isn't it? This happens because over time, we learn that being accepted and being part of a group gives us security. We live in a world where being different can cause discomfort and even resistance. It's like trying to walk in the opposite direction of a large crowd. It takes courage and confidence, but the pressure to follow the same path is very strong. People's judgment works as a way to maintain rules and make everyone act in a similar way. At times this can help, but it can also prevent each person from showing who they really are. The philosopher Plato once said, "The worst consequence for anyone who does not govern themselves is to be governed by someone less capable." When we live only to please others, we let people's fear and expectations control our decisions instead of following what we really feel. The fear of disappointing someone can be like an invisible chain, heavy enough to bind us, but so discreet that we almost don't realize we're trapped. There is a concept used in economics called opportunity cost, which helps us understand the price of our choices. When we decide to do what pleases others, we give up something valuable, the chance to live according to what makes sense to us, to discover our passions, and to dedicate time to what really makes us feel good. Every choice we make to please someone has a price. The price of not being true, the price of leaving our dreams behind. Whenever we say no to our desires, we are missing an opportunity for fulfillment. And every time we choose to please, we add another brick to the wall that separates us from who we really are. So, ask yourself a question. How much does it cost to continue living to satisfy others? Every time we make a decision out of fear of judgment, we accumulate regrets. It's like paying dearly for something that was never, in fact, ours. But when we learn to calculate this cost and choose what really matters to us, we begin to build a truer life. Being authentic, then, is the best investment we can make. If you agree, write in the comments, "Choosing to be me." This may seem like a small attitude, but it can make a big difference in your journey. Number 11. Toxic relationships. Relationships that are bad are like rust. They act silently and continuously, spreading and wearing away what was once strong. At first they seem small and unimportant, but over time they destroy our peace and hinder our growth. We often don't realize it right away, but these relationships end up, little by little, taking away the best of us. Stoicism teaches us to think about what we should cultivate, friendships and companies that strengthen our qualities and make our character firmer. Just as we protect metal to prevent it from becoming weak or rusting, we must be careful with the people we choose to be by our side. If we are surrounded by people who take away our energy, cause fights, or put our honesty at risk, our growth is hindered. As Marcus Aurelius said, the soul takes on the color of our thoughts. In the same way, the people we live with influence the way we see life, affect our strength, and even affect our well-being. Therefore, deciding who we want to share our days with is in fact choosing what we will keep in our hearts. But Stoicism also teaches us that we don't need to turn away from every person who challenges us. The most important thing is to think about the effect that each presence has on our lives and learn to react in the best way. We need to be honest. We can't change other people's ways, but we can choose if and how we let their attitudes affect us. This is where the wisdom of those who know how to avoid unnecessary problems comes in. When they realize that a situation has no solution, this person chooses silence, calm, and when necessary, distance. Walking away from someone who does you harm is not a lack of feeling. It is taking care of yourself. It's not rejection, it's intelligence put into practice. By leaving these spaces free, we open the way for true connections, those built with respect and growth on both sides. This is not just thinking about yourself, but rather a commitment to your own truth and to a life that is truly worth living. The law of supply and demand itself teaches us that what is rare is more important. In the same way, when we reserve our attention and time for those who really deserve it, we increase our value as a person. And by valuing ourselves, we attract those who also know how to recognize and respect what is special about us. Free yourself from this habit and allow your focus on the present to bring, over time, true advancement in your life. If you've made it this far, comment along the way, and thank you for sharing these minutes of reflection with me.